Welcome to the most expensive ghost city on the planet. At the heart of Singapore, towers glitter like symbols of success, but behind the glass, something unsettling is quietly unfolding tonight. At the center stands Marina Bay Sands, once the ultimate expression of modern wealth. A place where architecture, finance, and ambition merged into one breathtaking global icon of power. From a distance, everything still looks perfect. The skyline glows, the water reflects flawless symmetry. The illusion remains intact, convincing millions that prosperity here is not just alive, but unstoppable. But walk closer, and the silence becomes impossible to ignore. Entire towers sit half empty. Windows stay dark. Spaces designed for life now echo with absence instead of energy and human presence. Luxury was supposed to attract the world's wealthiest. Instead, something unexpected happened. The very policies meant to control speculation have begun suffocating demand at the highest levels of the market. A single number changed everything: 60%. That is the foreign buyer tax. On a $2 million apartment, over $1 million disappears instantly into policy friction alone. For global investors, the equation no longer makes sense. The entry cost is too high, the upside too uncertain. Capital, once flowing freely, has quietly started looking elsewhere for safer ground. The result is a skyline filled with value, but not activity. A financial center that shines brightly during the day, yet feels strangely hollow once the sun disappears beyond the horizon. This is not a collapse you hear. It is one you feel. A gradual fading of movement, of transactions, of life. The kind of decline that hides behind perfect architecture. What makes this more unsettling is the contradiction. Prices remain high. The branding remains powerful. Yet beneath it all, the fundamental demand that once justified everything is weakening. Developers are holding. Investors are waiting. Buyers are hesitating. And in that hesitation, something dangerous begins to form. A gap between perception and reality that continues to widen. Marina Bay is no longer just a place. It is becoming a question. A test of whether a city built on global capital can survive when that capital starts to retreat. Is this just a temporary adjustment, a pause in the cycle before the next surge of growth? Or is it the early signal of something far more structural and irreversible? Because history shows something important. Markets rarely collapse overnight. They fade quietly first, activity slows, confidence erodes, and only then does the visible damage begin. What we are seeing here may not be the end, but it may be the moment where the story changes direction, where certainty turns into doubt and strength begins to fracture. And if the surface already feels this fragile, then the real concern is not what is visible in glass and steel above the ground. The real problem isn't what you see above ground, it's what lies beneath. Beneath the glittering skyline of Marina Bay Sands lies a reality few ever consider. The ground itself is not solid rock, but engineered land layered over unstable marine clay. This region sits on the Crumbling Formation, a geological layer known for extreme softness. Engineers describe it as soil that behaves less like earth and more like a fluid. In some layers, water content exceeds several 100%. That means the material holding up billions of dollars in infrastructure is closer to saturated gel than stable ground. To build on this, engineers rely on deep foundations and long-term consolidation. The process slowly squeezes water out of the clay, allowing it to gain strength over decades. But this is not instant. According to soil mechanics principles, full stabilization can take decades. Time becomes a hidden variable in every structure built on this terrain. The real danger is not dramatic collapse. It is uneven settlement. One section sinks faster than another, creating stress, distortion, and silent structural imbalance over long periods. Now imagine adding a new tower, heavier, taller, more complex. Every additional load increases pressure on a system that is already adapting slowly to existing weight. Even small deviations matter. A few centimeters of differential movement can affect alignment, strain connections, and complicate mechanical systems designed for precision and balance. This is why modern structures here depend on constant monitoring. Adjustments are not optional. They are part of daily operation, quietly correcting what the ground is continuously changing. What looks like stability is often active management. Sensors, reinforcements, and engineering interventions work in the background to maintain the illusion of permanence. The expansion plans push this system further. A new tower means new load paths, new settlement patterns, and new risks that must be absorbed over time. It becomes a balancing act between ambition and physics, between what can be designed on paper and what the earth beneath will actually tolerate. Human engineering can delay, distribute, and manage forces, but it cannot eliminate the fundamental behavior of the ground it builds upon. This creates a paradox. The more iconic and complex the structure, the more sensitive it becomes to the smallest movements below. From above, everything remains flawless, but beneath, the system is constantly adjusting, compensating, and resisting slow, invisible change. And that is the unsettling truth. This foundation does not fail suddenly. It evolves under pressure, shifting gradually in ways that demand continuous control. So while the skyline tells a story of strength and precision, the ground tells a different story, one of patience, pressure, and limits that cannot be ignored forever. Because when a structure depends on constant correction to remain perfect, stability is no longer a condition. It becomes an ongoing effort that must never stop. And if the physical foundation requires this level of control, then the deeper question becomes unavoidable. What happens when the financial foundation faces similar pressure? Because what lies beneath is not just geological instability, it is a system built on time, stress, and the assumption that everything can always be managed. But history shows that not all pressure can be controlled forever. And when limits are reached, the shift is no longer gradual. It becomes visible. The ground may not collapse, but it will always remind you that nothing built on uncertainty is ever completely still. Behind the polished image of Marina Bay Sands, another reality is unfolding. Not in concrete or steel, but inside balance sheets, where pressure builds silently far away from public view. At the center of this system is Las Vegas Sands, the parent company responsible for sustaining the empire. And today, that responsibility comes with growing financial weight. The expansion once announced at around $3.3 billion has now surged toward nearly $8 billion. Inflation, complexity, and ambitious design have transformed a project into something far more expensive. This is no longer just development, it is escalation. Every added feature, every architectural statement carries a financial cost that compounds under a changing global economic environment. And that environment has shifted dramatically. The era of cheap money is gone, interest rates have climbed, making every borrowed dollar significantly more expensive to carry over time. Debt, once manageable, now becomes a constant drain. Financing costs rise, repayments tighten, and the flexibility that once supported expansion begins to shrink under pressure. Even strong revenue numbers begin to lose meaning in this context. High income does not guarantee strength when the cost of maintaining that income continues to rise. Operating expenses are climbing as well. Energy prices, staffing, maintenance, and luxury service standards all demand increasing capital just to sustain the same level of experience. Margins compress quietly. On paper, profitability still exists, but beneath it, the gap between income and cost narrows, reducing resilience against future shocks. At the same time, external forces begin reshaping demand. The global economy is slowing, reducing discretionary spending even among high net worth individuals who once fueled luxury markets. Nowhere is this more visible than in the decline of Chinese high roller activity. Once the backbone of VIP gaming revenue, that flow has weakened significantly in recent years. Capital controls have tightened outbound spending. Wealth that once moved freely into international luxury destinations is now restricted, monitored, and in many cases, redirected domestically. The impact is immediate. VIP rooms that once generated massive revenue streams begin to quiet down, changing the financial structure of the entire operation. To compensate, the model shifts from exclusive, high-margin VIP clients to broader mass-market tourism. More visitors, but lower spending per individual and lower profitability overall. This transformation changes everything. The business still operates at scale, but the efficiency of revenue generation declines compared to its previous peak performance. What emerges is a classic liquidity trap. Capital is invested heavily into infrastructure, but the return on that capital becomes slower, smaller, and less predictable. Money is locked inside assets that cannot easily be adjusted or liquidated. The system continues to run, but flexibility disappears as financial pressure builds. This is the critical shift. The machine has not stopped. Lights are still on, rooms are still filled, and operations continue smoothly on the surface. But beneath that surface, something fundamental has changed. The system is no longer generating excess momentum. It is sustaining itself rather than expanding with strength. And in financial systems, that difference matters. Growth absorbs risk, stability without growth exposes it, and decline, even gradual, begins to compound over time. This is not a collapse, not yet. It is something quieter, more dangerous. A slow transition from dominance to vulnerability, hidden behind numbers that still appear strong. Because when returns shrink while obligations grow, pressure builds in ways that are not immediately visible but become unavoidable over time. And while Singapore struggles to maintain this balance between cost and return, another force is quietly preparing to take advantage of the shift. And while Singapore struggles, a new competitor is rising. While Singapore recalibrates, a new force is rising quietly to the north. MGM Osaka is preparing to redefine the rules of luxury gaming and hospitality. This is not just another project. It is a next-generation competitor, designed from the ground up for a new era of global tourism, capital flow, and regional dominance. Geography gives Osaka an immediate edge. It sits closer to China, the the largest source of high-value gaming customers, reducing travel friction and making access faster, easier, and more attractive. Policy adds another advantage. Japan's approach is more flexible, welcoming capital rather than restricting it, allowing investors and high-net-worth visitors to operate with fewer financial barriers. Then there is infrastructure. Osaka is being built with modern systems, optimized layouts, and updated technology, free from the constraints of retrofitting older structures designed for a different era. Together, these factors create something powerful, a destination that is younger, faster, and strategically aligned with where future demand is likely to come from in the coming decade. Meanwhile, Singapore faces a different reality. Strict policies, high taxes, and controlled capital movement are beginning to push away the very flows that once fueled its dominance. What was once a protective framework is now becoming a limitation. Stability remains, but flexibility declines. And in global competition, adaptability often determines long-term survival. But the external threat is only part of the story. The deeper issue lies within the transformation of the luxury experience itself inside Marina Bay. Automation is expanding rapidly. Systems replace staff, efficiency replaces interaction, and technology begins to dominate spaces once defined by human presence and personalized service. The numbers improve, margins rise, operations become smoother, but something intangible starts to disappear, something that cannot be measured in financial reports or quarterly performance metrics. Luxury begins to feel different, less emotional, less personal, more transactional. Guests are processed efficiently, but the sense of exclusivity and human connection gradually fades. Robots deliver services. AI answers questions. Everything works perfectly, yet something feels missing. The warmth, the imperfection, the human touch that once defined true high-end hospitality. This creates a subtle but critical shift. Visitors still come, but the experience changes. It becomes less memorable, less distinctive, and more interchangeable with other global destinations. At the same time, mass tourism grows. Crowds increase, noise rises, and exclusivity weakens, transforming what was once a sanctuary for elites into a more generalized luxury environment. When combined, these forces reshape the identity of the brand, not through failure, but through gradual dilution of what once made it unique in the global landscape. So the picture becomes clearer. A weak physical foundation below, rising financial pressure within, a fading sense of exclusivity, and a stronger, more adaptive competitor emerging nearby. Individually, each factor is manageable. Together, they create a system under strain, where resilience depends on perfect balance across multiple fragile dimensions at once. This leads to the unavoidable question. Is this massive expansion truly a step forward into the future, or is it an attempt to delay a deeper structural decline? Because in systems like this, timing matters. Expanding at the wrong moment can amplify risk instead of reducing it, locking more capital into an increasingly uncertain outcome. And history offers a quiet warning. Icons rarely disappear suddenly. They evolve, they adapt, but sometimes they drift away from what made them meaningful in the first place. Marina Bay Sands still stands tall, the lights still shine, the skyline still inspires. But beneath that brilliance, the definition of its value may already be shifting, because icons don't die when they fall. They die when they stop meaning anything.